Gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Adams.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House will come to order.
At the corner of 14th and Carey Streets here in Richmond, there stands a monument to Virginia's statute for religious freedom. As many of you already know, this limestone wall on which the enacting clause of the statute is inscribed is a feature of the first Freedom Center, which was dedicated just last year here in Richmond at a ceremony attended by the governor. Its location is where the Virginia General Assembly enacted Jefferson's famous statute in 1786. Today, 230 years since its passing, the statute remains relevant. Already this session, points of personal privilege have been invoked in praise of this Jeffersonian achievement. Both the minority leader, Delegate Toscano, and the gentleman from Prince William, Delegate Lingamfelter, have commended Virginia's statute. I believe they are right to do so, and that we are all right to do so, particularly at this time in our history when there is much confusion surrounding the lawful expression of religious liberty and the right to conscience. Now, we understand why these matters can be complicated. As the governor mentioned in his remarks from last year, most of the world does not enjoy this liberty, and it was not reached easily in this country. But there can be little doubt that we have fared much better in recognizing it as a natural right. Indeed, it is an unalienable right. As Jefferson boldly wrote, "Almighty God hath created the mind free," that attempts to punish religious expression result in, quote, habits of hypocrisy and meanness, that to compel a man to furnish contributions of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves is sinful and tyrannical, and that truth, quote, truth is great and will prevail if left to herself, and that she is the proper and sufficient antagonist to error. Jefferson's reasoning powerfully influenced our approach to these matters across the nation, and is a primary reason why our country became a beacon and a hope for the rest of the world. But today, there is reason for concern as these basic principles have been challenged by our federal government and by agencies in other states. We have witnessed attempts to punish businesses for refusing to comply with mandates that violate company policies rooted in the religious conviction of its owners. In several places throughout the nation, state agencies have targeted individuals who hold to a view of marriage that is contrary to that recently defined and imposed by a majority on the United States Supreme Court, a view which, by the way, has been unrecognized until this generation. And it has been suggested that when it comes to the free expression of religion, constitutional protections are limited to what people believe, but not to how they actually live. As Virginians, we know differently. For certain, these matters are not always easy to resolve, and there will be differences among us in terms of the opinion as to the correct legal application. But from time to time, it is important that civil government state with clarity the fundamental principles around which we all consent. And for Virginians, we know to look to history as a guide. This session, I have introduced legislation to make clear that Virginia's statute for religious freedom is in fact and in practice the policy of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Different members of this body will no doubt have different motivations for emphasizing these principles, but we should all affirm this policy in the law that is etched in the marble of this house, that no one should, quote, suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.